Welcome to Orange County Power Players, where we spotlight the personal, professional, and financial success stories of OC's top leaders. Here's your host, Danny Flores.
Welcome back to OC Power Players, where I interview some of the most successful people in Orange County. Today's honored, I'm Danny Flores, your host, and today's honored guest is Bob Cretel, zooming in from Dana Point. Bob is an entrepreneurial-minded insurance leader with consistent history of success in all areas of insurance claim management. He has a history of success leading claim units through changes related to first notice of loss, physical damage, casualty, property, and subrogation. Working in several states and various parts of the country has exposed him to a broad perspective of the insurance industry. Throughout his career, he has been recognized in the industry as someone who can get results and have been involved in a multitude of projects. He has sought challenges and continued to develop his knowledge of the industry by earning several industry-respected designations. Bob, welcome.
Thank you, Danny. I appreciate it. It's wonderful to be here.
Yes, great to have you. So tell us a little bit about what you did in the insurance industry and how you got there.
Well, it's an interesting story, I think. I graduated college like most people did with no idea of what the world really had out there. I was doing a presentation not long ago and was explaining to some folks that in 1978, when I graduated high school, I could have drawn a 100-mile radius around a northern New Jersey town that I grew up in, and that's all I knew of the world. But watching, Southeastern football and Midwestern football for many years on TV, I wanted to go to a place like that. So I ended up down in North Carolina at East Carolina University, and they gave a marginal student an opportunity there to pursue a business degree. And I had a phenomenal 4 years in college. I learned how to learn. I learned what I may not have been very good at in high school with finishing projects and working on academics. So that was a really good experience for me and opened up my eyes to a larger world. When I went back after graduation, I really didn't know what I wanted to do. But a friend of mine's father, I was just outside of New York City in northern New Jersey, and a friend of mine's father worked for a reinsurance company, and he was telling me that he was investigating a claim involving a Rydell football helmet. Somebody had suffered a spine injury as a result of that, made a claim. The reinsurance company was investigating to make sure the underlying carrier did things correctly. And as he was explaining this to me, I was like, that's fascinating. And he goes, if you like this, if you think this is an industry you want to get into, I recommend you get a job with Liberty Mutual because they do a really good job of training people. So I did. And I started in the latter part of 1982, right after I graduated high school or college. And I found we just meshed. The industry and I meshed. I was investigating like a police officer. I was, for example, I was doing workers' compensation claims for a while, and there's an awful lot of fraud in that. So part of my responsibility was to go out and take Polaroid pictures. I'm dating myself, but Polaroid pictures of people that were supposed to be injured and too injured to work. And here they were working on their boats. They were playing sports. They were doing whatever they were doing. So I was doing some of that. I was investigating, some car accidents. I got into that. Commercial losses involving shoplifting and detaining suspected shoplifters and creating all kinds of stuff. It was just fascinating to me because you were basically a lawyer, you were an investigator, you were negotiating. You're looking at medical reports, trying to understand. There was a little bit of everything in there. And I just loved the business. Problem I had after my first year was I was really not making much money relative to living in Manhattan or New York City. I was working in New York City, and the commute from New Jersey was beginning to be a little bit of a problem, especially I knew that there was another world out there down south. So I left New York. I went to North Carolina, and it took me about 4 months, but I got a job with State Farm because I learned that they were the biggest, so might as well work for the biggest insurance company if that's what I wanted to do. And I put 20 years in with State Farm. I joined them in '84. I believe I was promoted into a management position in, I think, '86. So I got into management very quickly because that was what I went to school for. I loved the industry. I did pretty well at the job, and things kind of took off. And I bounced around Virginia, and mostly I went from North Carolina to Virginia, then from Charlottesville, Virginia to Hampton, Virginia. Met my wife in Charlottesville. We decided, where she was from California, I came out to California. Everything was going great. I had a 20-year career with State Farm, and they decided that they were closing the Costa Mesa office, and I was offered a position in Bakersfield. So
Wow.
if our audience is Orange County, then there's a difference between Dana Point and Bakersfield.
100%. Yes, like night and day. Just that in case if anybody knows, night and day. Yes.
Right. So it would have been really hard pressed for me to convince my family that Bakersfield was a good move. So, and not to disparage anything about Bakersfield, but there is a couple elements to this that I always bring up at times too. But I also, Denny, because I did take courses throughout my career and I really thought I did a good job, I was fairly arrogant. I thought, I could get a job pretty quickly. And fortunately, I did. I got a job actually 2 blocks away from the State Farm office with Auto Club Enterprises. It was formerly at that time Auto Club of Southern California. And I actually came in at a higher level of management with Auto Club. And that was in 2003. And I stayed there with, going through a lot of moves in different offices and one promotion, and ended my career with them in 2023 when I decided just to retire and from formal working, the 60-hour weeks. It got to be a grind. I had accomplished several milestones, 40 years of continuous working in a profession. And then, but I still love the industry, so I started my little consulting business. So that's kind of a really fairly quick way of getting to where we are now, I think.
Now, is Auto Club AAA?
It's one of the AAA clubs, yes.
Okay, perfect. Okay. Wow. Okay, so that's quite a journey there. But you stayed in the same industry the whole time.
The whole time.
So that makes you a real expert in the insurance industry.
I like to think so. And another part of that is that I sought different opportunities. Some of them came to me, but some of them I actually sought. For example, at one point, living in Dana Point, there was an opportunity to manage an operation in Gardena, which is about a 56-mile drive on the worst freeways in America, probably. But I really felt like I could make a difference in that office. And I really felt that if I did what I said I could do, it could lead to a promotion that I really, really wanted. And so sure enough, I went in there, approached things a little unorthodox, a little my version of what needed to be done, and was able to get the results that we were looking for. And it ultimately did turn into a promotion. And so you read my bio, and I always say that I'm kind of an entrepreneurial, minded leader. As you can imagine, working for large companies, particularly insurance companies, they're heavily bureaucratic. There's not a lot of individual, right?
No.
But I really think that if you can have, I approached, even when I had just a desk in North Carolina handling claims, I was the CEO of that particular book of business. That was my calling card. I wanted my stock to be high. And I always try to approach it like as if the people that are going to promote me or going to give me a raise are my stockholders. And then can I produce for them what they need to be successful? And I think I wasn't over, I don't want to over-aggrandize my results, but I always think I had the results that were necessary to move the company and the group that I was working with forward. And it was always fun working with people and seeing them, because there's a lot of untapped potential out there.
Yeah, no, that is amazing, and how, yeah, even though you're working in a corporate environment, that it's your own drive and entrepreneurial spirit that get you the results, and
Right.
that's key and important in the leadership position that you held.
Right. No, thank you. I believe it is. Yes.
So now we start a new chapter, consulting.
Yeah.
What does that look like, and what are you focusing on there?
My primary focus is I want I want the mechanism of insurance to be better. And I'll talk about that in a minute. So my focus is I really offer a lot of training to companies, to insurance companies, to say I can help you be more efficient. I can either talk to you about procedures and some of the guidelines you're working with. I can work on your individual employees and trying to get them a little more skilled, a little better at what they're doing. And I enjoy that because that's a language I can speak. And I know what their challenges are and what their hesitations are to do certain things. One of my later focuses, and I did do an article on LinkedIn, and in fact, I was just asked recently to get involved in it again, is in my industry, probably like many, uh, and again, that's the one benefit you mentioned that I stayed in the same industry for over 40 years.
Mm-hmm.
One of the interesting things is while I'm dating myself, I have been through a lot of evolutionary changes in the industry, and I've
Right.
seen how they work. And so, younger people that come into the business now and might be in their 40s or 30s who are in management don't remember what it was like before we had a personal computer, a cell phone, and all the tools that we have now. But my big focus is on this, Danny, and I think it's important. When I started, because the limitations of technology, I could not share information with anybody. So it just made good sense that when I handled a claim, let's take a car accident, two cars collide, it was just easier to say, Bob, just go handle it. You know the coverages, you know the liability situation, you know the injuries, you handle that whole thing. Once we got to technology to share information, there was a movement towards bifurcating the process. And suddenly, okay, Danny, you take the first notice of loss. Bob, you handle the insured's car so we can provide good service. We'll get Sally down the hall. She'll handle the third party car, the other party's car is not
Mm-hmm.
insured with us. Somebody else will handle the injury. If it becomes too big an injury, we'll give it to somebody else. If there's subrogation, which means that we're going to recover from somebody else's carrier or somebody else individually, we'll send it somewhere else. So before you knew it, you had like 8 to 9 people handling one claim that I used to handle all by myself. And there's some advantages to both. And it's also interesting that once that model was kind of introduced, I think every insurance company quickly adopted it. And before you knew it, you had these silos of people doing one thing, but not looking at the overall claim and how the people involved were affected. So, for example, if 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 for example you rear-ended me and you had an insurance company that was set up like this, I might get 3 phone calls dealing with somebody who's dealing with my rental car from you, your carrier, somebody who's dealing with my injury, somebody who's dealing with my car, and they're all different people. And if I ask a question like, okay, you're fixing my car, but what about my neck? Oh, that's somebody else. You have to call somebody else. Not very consumer friendly. So my focus
Right.
now is, and I'll also morph into my involvement with technology, is I've been involved with a lot of startup companies that are bringing some really cool artificial intelligence tools and just good technological tools to claim handling. And I worked with a lot of them when I was still working. But the way I'm envisioning it now is I I get under the separation of duties model. Nobody's an expert on everything, but they are an expert on one thing, and they do that one thing very well over and over again. But with all the new technology and the way artificial intelligence is impacting our business, now that you don't have to necessarily have that innate skill. The computer will interpret medical bills, photographs of damage, estimates, and tell you where the inconsistencies may lie. And so suddenly, things that you knew because you had the experience, the computer is kind of pointing that out for you. And so I'm trying to really work with carriers now to say, hey, let's jettison that old model of separating all this stuff, and let's see the economies of scale we can gain back if we give one person the computer with all the access to medical bill interpretation, recorded statement summarization, um, photographs, using the various tools from CCC and Mitchell to look at the photographs and the estimate and see what's accurate and what's not. And now the consumer doesn't have to deal with 6 different people. They only have to deal with one.
That would if I'm filing the claim as a consumer,
Right.
and I'm one point of contact, my life is so much easier, I think.
Definitely. Oh,
Right.
definitely. It's so much easier.
And now, does that, okay, so two things that's coming into play in this model is one, AI,
Mhm.
right? AI and the access to the correct AI automations and models, and setting up the AI to work and provide that information, and then the training for that person. So what do you guys do with that? AI being such a new technology, in the sense it's not new, but it's new to the mainstream, where maybe many different industries are adapting that quickly, but you have to learn and you have to get these experts in AI. How do you guys implement that? And then how do you guys train this one person to handle the different parts of the claim where multiple people used to handle that?
That's a really good question. One of the things, when I was working, right, part of my job as a senior leader, I had various vendors come in and pitch products to us,
Mm-hmm.
and trying not to be sensitive. I don't want to be using names of companies that may not want to be mentioned or whatever. But I was talking to one representative one day who had a camera, and was trying to get insurance companies to pay for the cameras because it would help with the claims, right? Which made sense. There was a little bit of investment on our part. If somebody had a camera in their car, we could see things. And so as I was talking to this person from Silicon Valley, I said, I'm getting hit with a lot of offers from people in your industry. And her response was, insurance companies are a huge target because they're very antiquated. Nothing has changed in decades. We've done a
Mm-hmm.
little bit, but we really have not adapted as quickly as we probably should, number one. Number two, it's perfect for artificial intelligence and data because it's a lot of the same things over and over again, whether it's a homeowner loss or a business loss, slip and falls, fires in homes, car accidents. They're all very, very similar. And you put that data in there and you can get a lot of good data out. And then the third thing that she said was that insurance companies have so much money that if we can get in there and just say, hey, we're going to, we'll charge a reasonable amount, again, we're insurance. That's what I've always found is interesting is that, you deal in billions, right? I have
Right,
friends that
right.
are in far more, sometimes more sophisticated industries, but when I started talking about the amount of money that I was responsible for and spending and had to account for, and it was billions and hundreds of millions, it was like pretty serious. So that's where I think that those folks are spending a lot of time and actually work with a lot of companies. I've up to about 4 companies now that have contacted me to help me kind of interpret what the tools they have. How do I bring them to a company, and how do I explain how this technology will actually benefit you? So the technology's there. We're the place for it. There's a lot. The major participants in the technology have done everything they can to make the integration pretty seamless. And everything I have seen says you can adapt this stuff technologically, and that's not necessarily my strength, right? It seems easy, right? Just plug in all these different codes and everything should work, portals and all this other stuff. People smarter than I get involved in that. But once you get past that, okay, we can ingest this technology, we can use it. And I love to come in and say, okay, now that you've got it, how can I get your adjuster, to your point? How can I get the claim professional or underwriting professional in some cases sitting there, access the information that says, hey, wait a minute, this estimate for damages is not accurate because of X, Y, and Z, or might not be accurate. What questions should you ask? How would you negotiate that? How would you approach that with the shop or the owner? And same thing with injuries and everything else. It's there's so much data that can be plugged into these technological tools that aggregate it and suddenly give you back something you can easily follow and easily say, hey, wait a minute, your injuries are not consistent with what you told me on the first day that we talked, right?
Right.
But if you didn't talk to that one person, you talked to somebody else, that may never even come to the light of day. And that's where there's, in my estimation, tens and millions of dollars being spent in unnecessarily because questions that are germane to the end result are not asked and not approached up front because it's all separated.
Yeah, you can't connect the dots that way.
You can't at all, right?
And if it's one person, that person knows the story because they're speaking to everybody. And when something doesn't make sense or fall in place, you're going to be like, wait a minute, that doesn't make sense. Either one person is not telling me the truth or the other person is not, or somehow something's not reconciling to each other.
Right. And the value add for the insurance companies are this: they spend a lot of money, but the margins are very small. And this is my approach. And as I work, this is what I always looked at as well was I don't want you going out denying hundreds of thousands of claims and hundreds of thousands of dollars of stuff. I want you being 1 or 2% better on every claim that you handle.
Mm-hmm.
If you're that much more efficient, if it's one less day of rental, if it's this. And the only way you can do that is by being hyper efficient. And that's where technology can help. And you're going to get those big wins. I have several stories that I like to tell when I do my teaching about. Some of them are a little racier than others because people do crazy things. But I have one easy one that just pops into head is I simply ask our insured in this particular case, hey, after the accident, did you interact with the other driver? And yes, but the guy was really upset. Well, okay, well, what happened? Well, it was a rear end accident. So the claimant in this case, the person who was hit, got down on their knees, looked under the bumper, saw that there was really no major damage, reached in, kind of pulled the fender back, the quarter panel back a little bit off the wheel, and was very upset with me because he loved the car and it was relatively new, blah, 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 blah. Well, when you have that little piece of information that he was on his knees just after the accident, but then when the injury and the doctor says, oh, he suffered this catastrophic injury as a result of the accident and is incapable of walking 6 weeks later, that little piece of information, it doesn't necessarily mean I don't pay the man anything. But when you talk to, in this case, when I finally got a hold of his lawyer and you say, I've got to record a statement. I know what the guy did. I can get him on the stand, right? If we go to trial, I am going to go down this line of questioning. And today we've got cameras everywhere. That was probably about 12 years ago. So suddenly you say, hey, wait a minute, we've got evidence and we got stuff that just mitigates that claim. I don't want to not pay the man. I just want to pay you what your claim is worth. And the sooner I do that, the less operating costs I have. And again, that's where technology can get you to that point faster.
That makes total sense, right? How can he have been injured if he was on his knees looking underneath the bumper?
Right.
And pulling the fender, right?
Exactly.
If you're hurt, you're not going to be pulling anything and you won't be on your knees.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and the way that the claims are adjudicated, not that many go to trial, but that's basically That again, that's what I loved about the industry is you're playing these cards, basically a card game if you're dealing with a third party claimant on an injury situation, and especially if they have an attorney, is hey, you can say what you want to me over the phone. We can, but if I have some documentation, testimonial evidence, photographs, video, whatever it is, that I can put in front of 12 people, I can mitigate your exposure. So I know I may never get to that point. I just want you to know that I need you to come closer to where a settlement, because if we do go to that trial, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to ante up a little more. And I think again, not to do a commercial, but that was always my perspective when I handled claims was I wanted to have the best picture of what happened. And if I could go to my superiors at the time and say, I need authority because this claim is not going to go well, let me show you why. And if I had
Right.
the evidence, then we could get that thing settled quickly. And there was
Right.
nothing better than a quickly settled claim.
Yeah. No, no, that definitely makes sense. Now, those are really great stories
Yeah.
and insights that us as consumers don't see.
Right.
Now, before our show here, we talked a little bit about you coming out with a book. Tell
Mhm.
us a little bit about that.
Okay, thank you. No, I appreciate that. I have a meeting tomorrow, as a matter of fact, to finalize the formats and what have you. Basically, the title of the book is The Best Advice I Ever Gave. It's a little bit of a tongue-in-cheek, smart alecky way of saying it's advice that I received throughout my career and that I had imparted on people, and it seems to have had an impact. It certainly had an impact on me, and I think others. So basically, the genesis of this book was I did a lot of conference presentations throughout my career, CPCU, NASP or subrogation.
Mhm.
I've been to a couple of industry conferences with CCC and IAA and Copart and a couple other different companies. I was a member of Toastmasters for many, many years to become a better public speaker. I've always enjoyed it. It was, you got the butterflies before the performance was always a real fun part. And then when you got into it and it went pretty well, you felt good about it. So I did a presentation starting about 8, 9 years ago that I titled "The Best Advice I Ever Gave," and it was basically some pointers to people in their career as to some experiences I've had personally and people that I've had with me. For example, and this is actually a story that's in my book. Some people are going to recognize themselves, but this person was a very good manager, and she came to me at one point and said, there's my family and I are thinking about leaving the state of California. There's an opportunity in a state that we'd like to go. It's a promotional opportunity, but I don't know if they're looking for someone with my experience. What do you think? And this was a manager that worked directly for me. And so I after this interchange, I kind of coined the phrase, well, why are you playing defense against yourself? If you think you want that job, then you go get that job. Don't try to anticipate why they don't want you, right? And why are you not saying why are you having this conversation and these doubts where well, I don't know if they want me. Well, you don't know if they do. Don't. There's enough people out there that are going to try to crush your career, right? You've got
Right.
competition, you've got managers above you. There's a lot of obstacles to being successful. Don't be one of them. Go out. If you want
Right.
that job, she made the right move by letting me know. I can make some phone calls on our behalf and speak, positively because she'd earned it. Um, and then go boldly and say, I'm going into this. And ultimately, in this case, she got the job. So that's one of them. There's a few that are pretty basic, but I tried to um, update them a little bit, like showing up on time, even if it's a Zoom meeting, being there
Right.
early.
Right. Right.
Some of those things for folks. It's actually book is done in three segments for people in the beginning of their career, a little more in the middle, and then folks leaving. Um, there's a segment in there about some experience I had where people who really bucked the technology that was coming into their world, right? It was easy for, again, even someone like myself who's been doing the same thing for 40 years. Oh, here's another tool. Oh my God, this is the one that's going to save us all, blah, blah, blah. But I had one employee who was in that frame of mind that, I'm only going to be working another 8, 9 years. I don't even want to do this. I'm just going to stick with what I do. And, we had a long conversation, but because of the experience this person had, I said, you should be the one that's embracing it and really, because you have the background knowledge to understand how and why it works. Well, this one individual, not everybody does, but this one individual actually kind of accepted the challenge and started attending more of the training classes. And before you know it, became our in-house specialist on how to use the new technology and was the go-to person for, making the technology work. And then blending that with their prior experience, now you can see, oh, wait a minute, not only can I operate the machine, I know what the machine's going to provide, and I have the experience to say, give me your product and let me apply my knowledge, and we can make this whole thing better. So I that's, to me is, I title that, you have to swim faster than the current. If you,
Right.
if you're not trying to keep up with technology, you won't decide where you go. People will decide where you go.
That is so true. That is so true. Well, Bob, congrats on your retirement.
Thank you.
Congrats on your consulting company. You're doing great things and great contribution to the consumer and to the industry. Now, as we wrap up our interview, what does the next 6 to 12 months look like for you?
Well, I'm excited about the book. I'm hoping to get once I get that out and in people's hands, doing some conferences, doing some conference and presentations, continuing to preach, if you will. I've been accused of that. I'll own it. The way of handling claims for the benefit of everybody, and making the mechanism run smoother. The insurance companies that adapt it, I think, are going to be a little leaner, a little meaner, a little bit competitive advantage in terms of combined ratios. And the employees that get involved, I think, are going to be able to have a better career because they understand things at a little bit better level instead of just being focused on one area. So I'm hoping to do a lot of conferences, get back into the training a little bit more.
Mhm.
I do have several companies right now that I'm working with to help them, really polish up their technological tool that they can provide to insurance carriers and help them make that better. And I have to say this, I owe a lot of my, and I do consider myself successful, especially when I look at where I came from to where I am. I do owe East Carolina a big shout out for that. That's why I have my shirt on. And they've been fortunate enough that now I'm in my third year. In September, I get to go back and talk to new students. There are students that are they have a very good risk management school and part of the School of Business. So I get to talk to them about career opportunities, things to consider, things to look for. And I've Yes, I started a long time ago, but I've been involved in it as recent as 2023. So I'm still up to date on what's going on. I'm still hip enough to, I think, resonate with them. So I've got a few things percolating, just enough to keep
Okay.
me, my brain going, but not
Yeah,
enough to keep
yeah.
me out of the ocean or off the pickleball court.
There you go. There you go, Bob. That's so great. What a great life. Now,
Thank you.
if somebody, and thank you so much for sharing all of your insights with that.
My
If
pleasure, sir.
somebody's listening to us and they'd like to get a hold of you, how can they get a hold of you?
The best way, my email address is simply R as in Robert, right? First name, last name Cretel, Cretel, the number one at gmail.com. That's my direct email. I've been using it. I haven't changed it because it just seems to work. Or LinkedIn. You can go into LinkedIn under Robert Cretel, and I'm there, and it's easy to pop up. I do have a cell phone number that I have no problem giving out because I've gotten a few good leads from it, and that's 714
Well, thanks so much, Bob, for joining us today.
Thank you, Danny. It's been a pleasure.
Yes, yes. And to our audience, please go to ocpowerplayers.com and follow us on your favorite channel. Thank you, Bob.
Thank you. Have a great rest of the day.
Thanks for listening to Orange County Power Players. Want to share your success story? Apply to be a guest at ocpowerplayers.com/guest.